Hello, today I thought we'd start talking about powers and roots. And go ahead and grab your calculator real quick, and I want you to do a calculation here. What I want you to do is going to be just take 2 times 2 times 2. And what do we get? I got 2 times 2 times 2, and I come up with 8. Now what I'd like to do is grab your calculator, and we're going to take 2, and in our case we're going to have to hit the little XY key here, to the third. So 2 to the third also equals 8. So basically what's going on here is that we are talking about powers. 2 to the third power is exactly the same as 2 times 2 times 2. 2 to the second power, or we sometimes call that squared, we call the 2 to the third power cubed. 2 to the second power would simply be 2 times 2. We'll take this number 2 to the fourth. We call the 2 the base, so this is the base. And we call the 4 the exponent. So the 2 is going to equal the base, and our 4 is going to equal our exponent. And we can do the actual operation of 2 to the fourth by going to our calculator and going to hitting the XY key and 4, and just like 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is going to equal 16, so is 2 to the fourth going to equal 16. So like I said before, to square a number, we take it times 2. If we're going to cube a number, it's times 3. 3 to the fourth would be what if we were going to multiply this out? Right, it'd be 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. And you can definitely do it that way. I think we end up with 81. 5 to the third, what would that be? Right, 5 times 5 times 5 should come up to 125. How about 4 to the fifth? All right, so we got 4 times 4 times 4 times 4 times 4, right? So we take 4 and we multiply it by itself 5 times. There's our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, when we are raising an approximate number to a power, we've got to round your answer to the number of significant digit in the base. Make sure you're not doing it with the exponent. For instance, 1.65, there's the base, squared, there's our exponent, is going to end up being 2.72. How's it come out on the calculator? 1.65. We've got a squared. We actually get several digits out here, but we need to round it to the number that we have in the base. So we rounded 2.7225 to 3 significant digits because that's what we have in the base. Let's do 1.52 to the third. We have 3 significant digits, and so 1.52 to the third is going to equal 3.51. So we came up with 3.511 0.808. We need to round that to 3 significant digits. So we end up with 3.51. What happens if we do negative numbers? So let's take negative 2 squared. And remember, that's the same as negative 2 times negative 2. Now, some calculators struggle with the negative bases. So 2 negative squared gives us a positive 4. What if we take negative 2 to the third? So negative 2 to the third is negative 8. Well, let's do another one. Let's do it to the fourth. Negative 2 to the fourth. 2 negative to the fourth. There we go, with 16. So we end up with a positive 16. And if we do negative 2 to the fifth, I've got a point here I'll make in just a second. So 2 negative to the fifth is negative 32. So there's a couple things I want to point out. One, I want you to look up here in on the calculator, and you'll notice that it says negative 2, and it's got the little up arrow. Sometimes we call that the caret, or the upside down caret, to the fifth. When we write these out in Canvas, that's what we will use to indicate that we have an exponent. You'll put that little up arrow. That is the Shift 6 key. So the Shift and 6 keys will make the little up arrow. That'll be our exponent. And the other thing I wanted to show you was that every time we have an even exponent, a 2, for instance, we get a positive number if we have a negative base. And every time the exponent is odd, we get a negative answer. So for 2 and 4, the answer was positive 4 and positive 16, but when we had odd numbers, negative 2 to the third and negative 2 to the fifth, we come up with negative 8 and negative 32. And if you multiply these out, you would see anytime you multiply a number by itself, it's positive. And if we have a positive number, for instance, we group these two together, and we multiply it by a negative number, negative 2, it's going to be negative again. From just a little bit of playing around we've done, you probably understand what we mean when we say 2 to the fourth. But what's it mean if we say 2 to the negative fourth? Or maybe 2 to the 3/5 power. We're going to get into that more later, but for right now, let's just put some stuff on the calculator and see what answers we get. So let's try this one, 3.85 to the negative second there. So I'll grab my calculator, and 3.85, I'm going to do my XY key, to negative. And you'll see we get a positive number. We end up with 0.067. I'll throw in some more decimal places, 465. And we've got 3 significant figures here, so we would round it to 3 significant figures here, right? And that would be 0.067. The 6 is going to round up, make that a 5. Let's try 5. 9, 2 to the 2/3 power. So this is where our little parentheses are going to come in handy. I think most of your calculators will probably have those. So 5.92, I'll press the XY, parentheses, 2 divided by 3. And we come up with 3.2725. We have 3 significant figures here. We need 3 significant figures here. And so we end up with 3.27. So let's use this concept in a practical way. So we have a formula for finding the volume of a sphere. And it's the volume equals 4/3 pi times the radius cubed. Now we're gonna round off pi to 3.142 for our example, and we're gonna say the radius is 2.74. So we've got a weather balloon, and we want to know the volume of the spherical weather balloon. So let's do this. Our volume is going to equal 4/3 times pi times our radius, 2.74 cubed. And let's work that out. So we have 4 divided by 3. Now I'm just going to hit the equal sign. Times our pi, which we said was 3.142, times, and I'm going to put this in parentheses here, 2.74. Hit the XY key, and you'll notice a little caret up here on the calculator to the 3rd equals, and we should come up with 178.03, and the norm number, of course, is bigger than that. What we want to do now is take a look at our significant figures, and our lowest number seems to be this number right here, 2.74. So we would need 3 significant figures. This 7 is going to round up, so we should come up about 86.2 meters cubed. So all we did was, even if you didn't understand the formula, we just ran the formula. We took 4 divided by 3 times pi times 2.74, and we cubed that, and we came up with the answer. We found out the number with the least significant figures, and we used that. So came up with 3 significant figures, and our answer came up to 86.2 meters. All right, so that's powers. Let's talk a little bit about roots. We know that 3 times 3 is going to equal 9. So we would say that the square root of 9 equals 3. What do we mean by this? We mean that if we have a number and we square it, we're going to get a 9. So the square root of 9 is going to be 3. Of course, we can do others. What happens if we take 3 times 3 times 3 times 3, which is the same as saying 3 to the 4th. So 3 to the 4th is going to equal 81. So we could say that the 4th root here of 81 is going to equal 3. So the fourth root, which is this thing right here, of this number is going to equal this number. Now the square root sign is what we call the radical sign. 81 in our example down here is what we call the radicand. And our 4 up here is the index. So 81 in our example is the radicand. And 4 in our example is the index. You won't hear me use those terms very much. Don't care a whole lot that you remember them. However, you may hear other people use them. Get a little bit more room. What is the square root of 4? Well, I can go to our little calculator and I can put in 4 and the square root. And I come up with 2. So when we talk about the root of 4, or the square root of 4, we say it's a 2. Get a little bit more hoops. But 2 times 2 is going to equal 4. But negative 2 times negative 2, it's also going to equal 4. So when we talk about the root, we are not talking about the negative number typically. We will be talking about the primary root, which is 2. So we would say that the square root of 4 equals 2, and not the square root of 4 equals plus or minus 2. So the principal root, we're going to be talking about just the positive number. On some calculators, you are able to do things other than the square root. On this one that I've got showing up here, you cannot. You can't directly, I should say. But we can, there is another way. There is a relationship between exponents and roots that we can use, just in case. So if we want to take the, for instance, let's go to the cube root of 3. So 3 times 3 times 3. 3 times 3 times 3 is going to get me 27. How could we find the cubed root of 27? My calculator doesn't have the key on it. So what we can do instead is we're going to type in the 27. We're going to go to the power of, and I'm going to go to the parentheses. If I'm going to do the cube root, I'm going to hit 3 and the reciprocal. We talked about reciprocals. I will close my parentheses. And the cubed root of 27 is 3. So again, we would end up taking, let me scroll down a little bit here. To get this, we would take 27 to the power of 1/3. That is the same as 27, or the cube root of 27. So if you don't have a way on your calculator to do this, then you can use an alternative method, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. Let's play around with this application really quickly. A storage bin in the shape of a cube is known to have a volume of 1550 cubic feet. So that would be feet to the third. find the dimension of each side. Now this is a cubic building, so we know that this thing has to be a cube or a square. And we have a formula that we can use. The volume of the cube is equal to the to the cube of the side. So the side S is the cube root of the volume. What the heck does that mean? So we know that the side is equal to the cube root of the volume. Again, don't worry too much about the formula itself. It's already worked out for you. We just have to be able to put it in the calculator. So if we want to find the side and we know the volume, we can use this formula. So we already said the volume was 1,550 cubed feet. So we need to take the cube root of 1550. And if your calculator has that key, great. If it doesn't, we're going to take 1550 to the 1/3 power. And so if we put that in the calculator, 1550, use the XY key. I'm going to use the 3 and hit the inverse. That's 1/3 and hit enter. And I came up with 11.5729. 11.5729. We have 3 significant figures, right? The 0 isn't a significant figure. And so we need to round our answer to 3 significant figures. The 7, we'll round this up, and we should end up with 11.6 feet. So each side is 11.6 feet. All right, that takes us through powers and roots. Remember when we're calculating those that we want to look at significant figures. And also remember, if your calculator won't do anything more than square roots, we can use the exponent. We'll just use the inverse of whatever root you're wanting to find.